light is returning. Even though this is the darkest hour, no one can hold back the dawn. Light is returning. Even though this is the darkest hour, no one can hold back the dawn. Light is returning. Even though this is the darkest hour, no one can hold back the dawn. Light is returning.
Okay, thanks again for your patience and enthusiasm and interest in this film and in the panel discussion, which you're all very welcome to stick around for. So the concept of the discussion and Q&A is to think about the issues raised in the film you've just seen in relation to a plurality of perspectives, including Jewish people who grew up in Germany, but also Jewish people who didn't grow up in Germany but are here now and feel as if they have a moral duty to actively engage in public discourse in this country in this defining moment. So I'm sure it's pretty clear everyone who's here is here in good faith, to participate in a respectful conversation and to learn from one another through comparison and contrast. So without further ado, I'll introduce the panelists. So from right to left, there's Michael Duniewski, who was born and raised in Jerusalem by a liberal lefty family. He avoided the draft and moved to Berlin in 2017. Next to him, there's Emily Frank, who grew up in Dallas in the conservative Jewish community, an environment similar to the one portrayed in the film, and she's been in Berlin for 5 years. And to her left, there's Lily Sommerfeld, a musician who was born to a Jewish Israeli mother in Berlin and grew up in the south of Germany. And we're going to start out by just asking them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their biographies in relation to the film and the trajectories that led them to be here in this room with us tonight. Starting with... Maybe she starts. Sure.
Okay, last time I had more time to think about what I was going to say because you started. Hello. Thank you all for coming, first of all. Thank you for watching this film and being here and talking about these things. So I was born in Berlin. I moved to Bavaria as a baby with my mother. My mother was born in Eilat in Israel, but moved to Germany as a child. Most of my family still lives in Israel. So growing up, we would go to Israel very often to visit family. And I remember that for some reason I was able to hold very contradicting beliefs at the same time. So at the same time I grew up with human rights values and everybody's equal, and also I learned about the existence of Palestinians quite early, but I did not really know what that meant. I knew that those politicians are corrupt and we are against them and they always want to fight and have a war, and that's not fair. But also we did not see beyond the structural, the structures of, colonization and the history and all of that. So I learned about that much, much later. One thing that I realized a couple of days after I watched the movie for the first time is that even though I did not, for the longest time in my life, my family, my mother, my sister, and I, my grandmother as well, were the only Jewish people in Germany that I knew. I grew up in a very, very small town in Bavaria. I went to school in Munich. There was one girl not in my class, but in a Parallelklasse, that was also Jewish, but we were not very close. There was a time for maybe a year where I attended some Jewish something studies. It was a phase in 6th grade in the Jüdische Gemeinde in Munich. But also I did not really connect with the other people there because very soon I realized that they saw Israel as something different than me. So, of course, I was had all these human rights values, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I knew these things like Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. We are surrounded by enemies. They all want to attack us. They actually attacked us one day after the state was founded. And yes, a land without people for people without land, which was maybe the biggest lie. So what I realized a couple of days after seeing the movie for the first time was that I learned these things not from Jewish institutions, because I was never really a part of that in Germany, but I learned that from German institutions.
Thanks for sharing, Lily. Yeah, my name is Emily, and as was mentioned, my experience growing up was basically exactly what is shown in the film. And I'll repeat a sort of story that I told in the first quick panel round that we did after the first screening, that I remember in my 8th grade history class in my Jewish day school, the topic for the entire year was history of modern Israel. And of course, there was no mention of Palestinians. There were a few brief mentions of some Arabs, some scattered Arab farmers on the land. And I remember at the beginning of the school year, my history teacher stood at the front of the class and was saying that she would be teaching our version of the history, and that we would maybe hear other versions at some point, but this is our version, and you know, and I was, 12, 13 years old at the time, and I didn't really understand what that meant. But I came back to it for so many years after as this history and this story that I was taught was dismantled. And I guess we'll talk more later about how our experiences led to this dismantling. But I just kept coming back to that history teacher. I mean, what kind of history teacher tells their students that they're telling one perspective and not trying to give us an accurate version of history? Yeah.
Hi. Let's hope I don't get too nervous. Yeah. So I watched the movie a couple of hours ago, and I remember that one of the things that was striking to me is how much work is done, and like how much money is spent kind of pushing this ideology down the throats of like these people who are not related to it. Actually, they're not from there. They don't, it's kind of this superficial connection that has to be reinforced all the time. So that's kind of the difference I felt between their experience and your experience and mine, because even though the values that I mentioned are the same as the ones that I kind of have been grown on, the difference is that I grew in an environment where these things were just obvious. So the indoctrination happened as a result of just like other things not being mentioned. Like Palestinians were just like this great other. It was obvious that you grew into the military system as part of your kind of assimilation into society. So like everything, even though I grew up in a lefty family, and like I had like a humanism I had like almost like a tribal belonging to the idea of peace. It's still, even though I was going to demonstrations and I was kind of, there was a lot of optimism also when I was growing up, hoping for a peaceful solution. It still was kind of existing within a lot of assumptions that I never questioned. Like, and I never thought of myself as Zionist or anti-Zionist. Like that was not even part of my thought process, because that was obvious. Like that's just where I am. And again, even though I belonged to the lefty, peaceful, liberal camp, it never occurred to me like what actually is the context and the circumstances in which I was working, right? So there wasn't like, I can tell a million stories that would probably sound fucked up to everybody here, but for me it was just like natural, you know, like, yeah, I can tell more about it later.
Thanks. And so I think we do want to open it up to general discussion, questions and comments. I think before we do that, if you're agreeable, I could ask one more question, perhaps. As we saw in the film, there's these key moments that happen to the protagonists where they have a kind of something like a conversion experience or a kind of key turning point. And I wonder if that is something, you know, you've experienced individually, or if it was a different, more gradual or incremental process to, you know. Does anyone want to tackle that first? Or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this question. And I can say that it's also just, it's more than getting accurate information, right? It's also a sort of shift in, like, so my great aunt and uncle left World War II Europe, tried to go to the United States and were turned away, and so they went to Israel. And I think it wasn't just learning accurate history, but also understanding that this can be true, and it can also be true that Israel was built on expulsion and the Nakba, and both of these things can be true at once. And coming to that understanding was really important for me in being able to hold all of these things together. But my process was related to, I think, something that Lily said earlier about social justice, that I had all these social justice values brought to me by my family, brought to me by the environments I was in. You know, when I was a college student, it was the first wave of the Black Lives Matter marches, and I was participating in them, and other people who shared my values on that were saying these things about Palestine that I had never heard of Palestine. But I thought, oh, these people must have something right to say, because we agree on so many other things. But I had just never heard of any of this before, much like is shown in the movie. And I think I can also compare it to also learning a more accurate version of U.S. history, learning that the U.S. was built on slavery and on the genocide of the First Nations, of the Native Americans. And, you know, these things can be true, and you can hold all of those, you can live in the United States and also know all of this history and think about what you do with that. And you can also, use it to, I don't know, I'm going to pass it on.
Yeah, for me it was, kind of similar. I never had this kind of wake-up moment like it's shown in the film, or like what you just said, because I had heard about these things before, and my shift was more gradually. But I think a major turning point for me was in 2009 and then 10. First of all, the Gaza War of 2009 really shook me up. My mother actually moved back to Tel Aviv for 2 years and decided to leave again after the Gaza War of 2009. And I visited them for a couple of months, and then decided to go back in 2010 for a vacation. That was the last vacation I took in Israel, because, I mean, even though I had never heard about BDS at the time, I decided that I will not spend my money there anymore. I just cannot do that after this vacation in 2010. And for me, it was just how casually, you know, I was in my early 20s, and you meet people all the time, and you talk to people, and just how casually people would say the most racist things, and not only about Palestinians, about black people, about basically, like one time I was approached at the beach and, oh, you're from Germany. Oh, if I can I ask you something since you're from Germany? Aren't you scared that the Turkish people are gonna take over your country? Like, we knew each other for maybe 30 seconds, and that he felt comfortable asking me that question. And then I told him how proud we are about our kebab in Berlin, and you know, it's part of Berlin culture, and people from Bavaria come to Berlin to eat kebab. And it was a thing. So I had like 5 to 10 experiences, something like that, in those 2 weeks, and it really gave me a feeling that this is a society that has shifted so much from what I believed they were. I don't know what they were exactly like 10 years before that or 20 years before that. But I had just never experienced anything like this. And it really, made me look deeper and learn more about the history, and learn also more about what is Israeli media like. Like, they don't come to these ideas because they're bad people, obviously not. But this is a society that had been fed lies for generations now, and had been going through a system of, I mean, you will be able to speak much more about that, but I think the whole culture around the IDF is very important to understand Israeli society. So maybe you want to continue.
Yeah, so like I said, it's very obvious from a young age that you go to the army, and people from a young age already kind of fantasize about which unit they're going to join, and the unit that you're going to join can dictate your adult life. Like, if you join a good unit, you will join some clique that will, when you end up in a good job and so on. So it's kind of it's completely intertwined with civil society. There's no difference. You see people in uniform talking about all sorts of stuff they shouldn't be talking about, like they're the experts on anything. I mean, there is this term that we keep on, like when the people on TV and politicians talk about what's happening in Israel right now, they use the term hamatzav bitroni, which is the security situation. So like everything somehow is folded into this idea. Like, there's no idea of like the humanism or like the any like what the world thinks about us. None of that matters. It's all kind of just subsumed by this greater idea of the security situation. It's all a security question. So you grow up like this, and this is reinforced all the time. You know, you have a personal gas mask since you're a child. There's drills all the time, going in the basement because there's rockets gonna come in. You grow up in the shadow of, like, the second Intifada with bombings and all of that. So you adopt this idea. You don't question it too much. It doesn't really matter the history or like what's going on beyond the fence. Like it's the security, right? And I was just lucky being born into a family that kind of reinforced, I guess, the right values. And having also like Palestinian friends a bit, and like just being somehow, I can't really explain it honestly, but the majority of people just go with this idea, or even worse, they have like a totally racist ideology that just, presupposes that they are just better, and this all belongs to them for some reason. I'm gonna think of a funny story. Yes, so I didn't go to the army. And the funny part is that, like, I knew this from a very young age, and but there was always this fear that the moment will come and you get the letter in the mail and you go into this system which will crunch you into some role or whatever. And every time I would be very stressed about it, my mother would say when you're 18, there won't be an enlistment anymore because there's gonna be peace, And this was every year, it became a joke. No, don't worry, there's gonna be peace. So yeah, there was a lot of optimism at some point. That became a farce, I guess, and then a huge 2 decades of I guess a slumber where the right wing took over. I'm rambling. I'm making sense. Go on. Yeah. What I want to say is that even though I was, as I described, this lefty, I did go even to the West Bank to protest against stuff. It was all. What I realize now, I've been kind of, I guess, more radicalized in recent times, is that it was all in this still framework that was fed to me from a young age. I never took the time to learn the history, which I'm doing now. And I just said, the movie was gave me some optimism to see the change that's going on with the American youth, because frankly, I don't think this will happen from Israel because of what I described. It's so deep.
Are there any questions or comments from the... Yes, hands going up. Eliana is the mic person.
I would be very interested from any of you who feels able to answer this, how the protests against the Netanyahu administration in Israel, both before and after October 7th, tie into the whole picture that we see now.
Yeah, so this whole movement, which was pretty substantial, even close to a civil war at some point, is completely unrelated to the Palestinian question. The political situation in Israel is such that speaking about the Palestinians is very close to a taboo at this point. And these demonstrations are about the supposed liberal quality of the establishment, because Bibi had to unite with fascist elements in order to secure his place, and to do that, he also to save his own ass, he wanted to make changes to the fundamental laws, and I guess that's a good development, but it's intentionally excluding any type of any mention of the Palestinians, because that's just beyond the pale at this point, actually. And there is a liberal element in Israel. I don't know how much that would be open to talking about a settlement and so on. But right now, the mainstream view is just cannot even fathom this. So these people are actually silent right now. They would not speak about this because it would be used against them, and they could not promote their own agenda. So it's really just beyond the pale. Maybe I would say less than 10% of the population would even talk about this out loud at this point. Yeah.
Thank you. I saw another hand go up. Maybe I'm closer.
Okay. I can probably speak loudly enough, but thank you very much. How are you coping now with Gaza in Berlin? I mean, the silencing, the repression is not just affecting Palestinians and Jewish people, and the outrageous things that are being said to so many Jewish people who stand up for the Palestinians. How are you dealing with that, and what are you doing?
I mean, we're doing this, so I think this is, and it feels a lot better, now that this is happening, and something's happening in public, and you're all here. Please applaud. It feels like a question for the full panel. I passed the mic around, but personally, yeah, it's been tough. I moved to Berlin in September. From Scotland, Glasgow, where I got this lapel pin, and it's a kind of like much more. The atmosphere is very different, right? So, yeah. Who wants to go next?
Thank you for that question. But like, we're not the ones who have to cope with the genocide. So our experience is really, yes, we're experiencing silencing, and I mean, I'm a musician. I had shows canceled before. I was booed off stage a couple of 2 weeks ago. It happens, but my family is not being slaughtered. I don't have sleepless nights right now, and so I'm almost used to it by now. I feel like what changed for me since October is that I have given up on Germany more, I would say. I don't necessarily see my future in this country. I don't know where I see it, to be honest. But, yeah. For now we're here. For now we're doing events like this. It keeps us sane sometimes. Activism keeps us sane, I would say. I mean, that's a major reason why we're all here, to be with people who understand the situation and share our feelings with each other, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo what you've said, that I don't have family in Gaza, so I am not, what I deal with is nothing compared to that. Nothing at all.
I'm sorry,
but
I just
in,
have to clarify. That was not the point. The point is, I'm not that aware. I was at the demo or rally that Candace Wrights organized. I'm here tonight. But I'm not that aware of other things that people, Jewish Voice for Peace or whatever, are organizing. That's, what are you doing?
So you're absolutely right that there's a big kind of concerted effort from the state and to suppress dissident voices. Yeah, for sure. The reason this is happening here is because it's a private establishment that it would not be affected by the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, and it's a big topic. I'm not personally affected by it, but one thing I can say about myself, I don't have a passport, for instance, a German passport, so I'm afraid to participate in demonstrations, except the big ones, because I could be deported, for instance. So that's my kind of personal experience. But yeah, it's a totally fucked up situation that I'm actually just learning more and more about. There's a great podcast, The Dig. It's from Jacobin, and they're interviewing Emily, what's her name? Discher-Becker. Yeah, you should listen to that. It goes into detail about how this whole establishment has, the anti-Semitism industrial complex has developed, and it's really fascinating and really perverted and very depressing. Yeah.
yeah, and I would add, yeah, I mean, I feel like since October it's been very alienating to see the way that the German media and political discourse is dealing with this situation. I feel like they're claiming to represent me, and I don't feel represented. And so that is, the past few months have made that very clear to me, that Germany has not learned nearly as much from its history as it claims to have learned.
But watch this space. There's going to be a lot of events coming up, yeah, in the next weeks and months. Yeah. April's going to be, yeah.
I just have a quick question. So I loved watching the movie. It was very interesting. I think this sort of, I guess, screening and event is very, very unique, as I've attended some demonstrations, and obviously we're looking for, you know, places to connect with people that are currently suffering through this whole crisis, even though I'm not Palestinian. I think it's obviously very upsetting. I would be interested, I don't know if you have numbers or anything, but is the community growing? Is the memberships growing for these groups, these communities, the American ones and also the German ones? That I would be interested to know. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of people are joining. There's a feeling that yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, also specifically for the Jewish people.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Yeah.
I know that we don't disclose our numbers of Jüdische Stimme. I think we almost doubled in size since October 7. I actually have some numbers from Jewish Voice for Peace New York, because I have some friends there. And they told me that they just rented a new space to welcome all the new members, because the other, like the one they originally chose, it was way too small, and now they're doing it in a church that holds 1,000 people, so they have 1,000 new members, which is crazy. Yeah. So I think a lot of things. I'm still coming back to your question because I obviously misunderstood you the first time. The connection to these groups, Jewish Voice for Peace, especially in New York, I went to college in Boston and I spent some time in New York, so I go there a lot. This is what really gives me hope, to be honest. Also what is being said in the film at the end, that these, like especially this new, millennials are not the new generations, I know that, but some millennials and Gen Z, actually, like half of the Jewish Voice for Peace New York leadership team is Gen Z. So there's a lot of new ideas coming, and for the first time in I don't know, my lifetime, this generational shift gives me a lot of hope. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a few things, so I try to be as fast as possible. So first of all, thank you all for being here, talking to us. And so if I'm honest, this movie, what was really, okay, I start with what I really liked on the movie. It was really awesome that I think it showed like how the indoctrination actually works, because in Germany you don't really have access to it, like because we being taught basically a different kind of version, but there's many different versions out there. So we are not being indoctrinated in that way, but in a different way, I would say, you know, in defense of Israel, of the state, you know. But what I found a little troubling in the movie, but maybe it's just me, it kind of left me a feeling of like, you remember like when white people actually coming to terms with being white and they having a really hard time, like, oh my gosh, I'm white, oh my gosh, I have all these white privileges, oh my gosh, there's racism and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't know, but a little bit this movie came across to me as like, mostly Ashkenazi Jews realizing they being a part of a racist system. But for me, it's so hard to believe that you actually can live in that without realizing it. Like, I mean, without realizing it way earlier. It's like, in the States, the people, the white nationalist, hardcore racist people, they actually are very proud from a young age and they know what they're doing. But here in the movie, it comes really most across as it was impossible to realize it before you're 26 or 27 or when you move to the States. Or like, this is like, I cannot You understand what I mean? And it's a little bit, it came across like a little bit as mostly white, or like not white, but Ashkenazi Jews, then realizing, oh, look, now we realized we did bad and now we are good, or something. Yeah. It's like, but maybe this was just my personal...
No, thank you. I think that's an important point that we might have, Lily has a response to.
So, first of all, yes, it's a movie about that. I think it's good that there is a movie out there about that. There's many other movies that address different things about this whole issue, and I think this movie has a place in the world. I started, a couple of years ago, I got very, very interested in cults for very different reasons. But I got obsessed with cult podcasts. It's a whole rabbit hole. But it got me to a point where I started thinking about Zionism as a cult, basically. And what I learned about how cults function, it's actually very similar to how Zionist works sometimes. So to respond to that, yes, unfortunately, it is very, very possible to live inside a cult until you're 26, 27 years old, because you have all that privilege. You're surrounded by people who believe the exact same thing that you believe, that use the same language. Language is key in all cults. So, one example, you never speak about Palestinians, you speak about Arabs, because Arabs are a large group of people, you know? Arabs, like Egyptians can be Arabs, and people from Jordan, and so that's how you erase the Palestinian existence, because you never use that word. It's all Arabs. And that is just one example how Zionism uses language to create a whole, magical experience of the world. And when you grew up in a place, in a community that teaches you all of those things, and you have very, very little contact with people on the outside world, let alone people from the other side, you know. It is very possible to live within this cult for a very long time. And I think the question that we all need to ask ourselves, and that I have been asking myself for years now, is how do we turn Germany into Simone Zimmerman? What needs to happen for people to wake up from that kind of cult?
Yeah, I can also respond from the Simone Zimmerman perspective, I guess, that since I shared her experiences a lot. And yes, you are right. This is exactly what you described, this film. And that's why I think right now there are many film events going on. There are many demonstrations and that demonstrate Palestinians' perspectives and not this perspective. And those are the most important perspectives to listen to right now, not actually this perspective. And that's actually why it is my wish that this film is seen, it's my greatest wish that this film is seen by other Jews and other American Jews, right? Because, and I would say that also, for example, when I first sort of was having these thoughts, or was first ready to be open about them, I posted on Facebook about it, and I got a lot of angry people, but I also got people reaching out to me secretly and wanting to talk to me about their own thoughts about this and changing their minds. And so, yeah, I would hope that a more public conversation about this leads other Jews to change their minds as well. And regarding can it take till 26, 27 to get out of this? Yes, you're told your entire life that this is how the world is. You're told your entire life that the sky is orange, and then to learn that actually the sky is blue. It can really take that long. It took me years of progressing, years of learning the history, years of talking to people about it. It's unfortunate, but yeah, it can take that long.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think so the change that these people go through can be hard, and you can acknowledge that it's hard to make this change and get out of the cult, but it doesn't make them heroes. And the movie maybe does, maybe the movie does kind of paint this, and maybe that's part of kind of the appeal, trying to draw people in a way. It's an effective movie, right? But you're right that it doesn't make them heroes that they finally, learn the truth, right? Yeah.
Thanks. I think it's clear from the target audience for this film, the primary target audience is Jewish Americans, right? And that's clear, yeah? No, it's a really important point, and I think it was a really productive point to make in this room tonight. We're sort of running, it's almost 11. Mohammed, who's been our incredibly gracious host and has apparently infinite patience for putting up with us, needs to go home. And he's also our technician. He's up there. I can't see him from where I'm seated, but please. Yeah. Okay, we have time for one more question in that case. And then, please, or comment question. And then I just want to thank a few more people, and then we'll wrap up around 11. But please.
I tried to make with my bad English. I would like to explain what is going on. The film is good. I like it. And you are very well. You are talking openly. But I was missing in the film talking about Zionism. No words. Did you see anything about Zionism in the film? Except you now. So I think when we have a future together, Palestinian and Jewish and Israeli, whatever, I think it is better to talk about this, because the origin problem is the Zionism, not Israelism. Because the history of the situation is not Israel, but the history before. So why it is coming to Israel? Zionism is first. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about the future together? What do you think, what is the solution together? I see many protests in Israel since 10 months before the 7th of October, and I was thinking myself, it is like we go now outside and demonstrate. 10 months, nothing has happened with Benjamin Netanyahu, nothing, and now it will happen nothing. This is what I feel. But my question is to you, how many percentage is people like you in the Israeli society? And what do you think about the future of the problem? I can't tell you about my opinion. I see one state equal for everybody.
Thank you.
About the Zionism part, you're absolutely right. And I think, like I said, in my experience, I always knew that the occupation is wrong, but I only started to examine Zionism later. So I think you're right that the movie is missing kind of the historical context, but I think, again, it's about like what it's trying to focus on. And I think later, when people go into it, they get interested maybe, and they learn the history, and they can develop a better context. But you're absolutely right that it's not talking about it at all. Yeah.
Just to remind you that this is the first in a series of monthly film screenings, and the other films that we're showing will get into that history deeply in deeply uncomfortable ways. So please come back.
Regarding the future, I wish I had an answer for you. I think it's kind of the point that it's... Okay. I know, I'm about to. So I think it's kind of the point that it's not for me to decide. I have German citizenship. I was born here. I'm a German Jewish person. I think if Germany can't have me here, then that's a German problem that they need to fix. Because I really want to live in Berlin as a Jewish person. I don't consider Israel my safe haven, you know, when something happens. So that's why I think it's not for me to decide. I, just as you, believe that probably the one-state solution, if we want to call it, is the most likely to succeed in my head, theoretically. I believe it's for the people who live there to decide, one person, one vote, how they want to live together. If they want to have one state, two states, a confederation, it's not for me to decide, it's for the people who live there.
I also don't know the answer, but I know that historically there've been many, not the same, but like many bloody conflicts that have been solved. Right now, there's no enough people there that like have the willingness to do it. That needs to change, but a solution can be found in the end because we saw this in other places in the world. Like, and there's no other choice. Also.
And until then, let's keep coming together, yeah, like we did tonight. On that note, and thank you again for the important, difficult, maybe impossible to answer in this moment question about history and the future, the past and the future, together. So I just want to thank again the Israelism team, who have been really amazing and waived the screening fee for us so we can collect donations instead for Palestine Children's Relief Fund. That's in the glass jar on your way out, if you didn't see it on the way in, along with the mailing list. If you want to stay looped in about upcoming events, there's also the Spore website, Jüdische Stimme on Instagram, Twitter, etc. The next screening is April 20th, Saturday, same time, same place for H2, the Occupation Lab. Thanks again to our panelists. Eliana, the awareness team, thanks again to all of you for coming and being a really exemplary public. It's been really a privilege to go do this with you tonight. And thanks especially to Mohammed, who's up there in the booth. And we have a gift. I think that's everything. So look, it's been really, again, a real privilege. You're free to go.